So, parents with nanny cams, what have you caught your babysitter doing? Story number 1. Once, at the very last moment, when no other babysitter was available, I hired one that is short or notorious for not being good, not dangerous, or anything like leaving the child unattended, but like the type where she would not console the child if they were crying, punish them for doing small things. While away, I was very suspicious, so I continuously was glancing at the baby cam. The babysitter was playing with him, singing songs, and completely engaging him, well beyond the way you would expect somebody who was considered a bad babysitter to act. Essentially, what happened was the babysitter got hired by a crazy parent who didn't like her at all, so they spread a bunch of mumbo-jumbo through the neighborhood. When I came home, I gave her a very large tip, and she was the one I always hired whenever I needed a babysitter. At the last moment, hired a babysitter that was rumored to be bad. Turns out she was a really good babysitter who once got hired by a crazy parent who didn't like her, so they spread a bunch of negative stories. Story number 2. Not a nanny cam, because this happened in the 90s. And I don't think we had them in Scotland then, but my mum came home early one day because she had become suspicious of our nanny as my sister, and I never slept after a day with her. She found both my sister and I in bed in the middle of the day. Turned out my nanny had been dosing us up with child medicine to make us sleep all day so she could sit and do nothing. Story number 3. My friends paid a family member to feed and water their dogs while they were gone on vacation for a week. They didn't. One of the dogs died. I ended up removing the body because my friends couldn't handle it. It was their puppy, and the other dogs started eating it after it died. I wish I could erase that memory from my mind. Story number 4. Well, a case which happened near where I live. Woman used to work. Husband out of country. Had a 2-year-old kid. They hired a nanny to look after him during daytime. Day by day, kid started looking malnourished. So she set up a spy cam. Apparently, the lady used to bring her kid and feed him all the food left for the kid she was supposed to babysit. Then she would feed the kid cheap biscuits. She was promptly handed over to police. Story number 5. My story isn't that interesting, but I have a camera to check in on my rabbit when I'm out there. The biggest surprises were mostly just how almost nobody followed my pet sitting instructions. The one exception, ironically, was my brother, who claimed to hate the rabbit and always wanted to get rid of it. I got an alert one day that my camera had detected movement while my bro was there taking care of him, and I decided to take a peek. I opened the app connected to the camera and saw my bro walk into my room, lay on the floor, and start playing with my rabbit. It just warmed my heart. Story number 6. We have cameras outside of our house. One day, my neighbor told me that he saw my bunnies roaming the streets a few times. I didn't believe him, so I took a look. One time at work, I looked at the cameras and saw the gate slightly open, so I rewound the footage. I go to work super early, so I watched as my wife fed them, then got ready for work. The bunnies peeked around the side of the house and waited to see my wife's car leave. Then they pushed on the gate hard enough for the latch to set free. Then they left one by one. Later, before I got back home from work, they would make their way back and close the fucking gate. Smart little fuckers. I never knew the gate latch was so weak, so I fixed that problem. Story number 7. I travel the United States for work and am fortunate enough to be able to bring my 2 Beagles with me. They have never been away from my side longer than the time I've been at work. They are 10 and 13. I have a camera that I use to check in on them sometimes, mostly because my larger Beagle is quite the ingenious guy, opening doors, scooting chairs over places so he can jump up onto the counters, etc., etc. Last year, I was in Oregon and had to go home to Michigan for an emergency. I do not fly with them, I will only drive. So I was in a pickle and reluctantly hired someone off of Rover that was willing to come stay over at my hotel room for 3 days. She was great, kept up on texting me about the dogs, said things like tossing them a ball right now. So I would check in via the cam when I thought it was appropriate. This woman was amazing. Not only was she playing with them enough to make them exhausted, she was even teaching them new tricks, making them use their brains to solve puzzles, and even got my 42-pound Beagle to get up on her back so she could do push-ups. She was an avid CrossFitter. I was extremely happy. Story number 8. We have a security camera in my bedroom for my free roam bunny, so we can keep an eye on her whilst on work, if we go on holiday, etc. Well, my dad is 50 and is a big bloke who acts like he doesn't like pets, came over to visit one day whilst I was out. He went in my room and crouched down calling the bunny. He spent an hour trying to pet the rabbit and kept repeating in a soft voice, "I'm not going to hurt you, I just want to pet you and see how fluffy you are." He just about shit himself when I spoke through the security camera to tell him she's very fluffy. Story number 9. My grandpa was staying with my parents, but they figured it best to hire the regular sitter to watch my younger siblings overnight since they didn't think my grandpa was up to the task, and they were attending a wedding a couple hours away and made plans to spend the night in a hotel nearby. They had set up a nanny cam in a couple room, my siblings' bedroom, the master bedroom, living room, and kitchen. All motion activated. They normally wouldn't bother looking through the footage if everything seemed fine upon returning home, and their master bedroom cam had never been triggered before. When they returned, they noticed that the cam in the master bedroom had been triggered, so they decided to take a look. Cut to footage of my grandpa and the sitter both naked, aggressively making out from the entrance of the room, staggering while intertwined towards the bed, and then about 20 minutes of banging on my parents' bed. The sitter was about 20 years old, and my grandpa was around 70 at the time. My dad called me immediately after he saw the footage, laughing his ass off, and I could hear my mom crying in the background, completely mortified from what she had just witnessed and shouting at my dad to throw out the sheets and kick out grandpa. My mom called the sitter to confront her, and she just apologized and said there was connection or some shit to that matter. When she asked my grandpa what he was thinking, he just said, "At my age, you must seize every opportunity. I wish there was audio for the build-up." I lay awake at night, sometimes just wondering what kind of game my grandpa was talking to get in that sitter's pants. Story number 10. This isn't something that I caught a babysitter doing, but I remember that I once saw on TV the case of some parents that went with her baby to the doctor because she cried a lot for apparently no reason. The doctor told them that she looked really stressed and asked them if they were doing something that could make her act like that. They didn't. Then the doctor and the parents noticed some really tiny dots in the girl's belly, and they had no idea where they came from. The babysitter told them that she had no idea, but they didn't believe her and secretly put cameras to spy what she was doing. Turns out that she was crazy. She was stabbing the baby with a needle from time to time and doing things like shaking her cradle incredibly hard to torment her. Of course, they called the police, confronted her, and she got arrested. Story number 11. Not a parent and not a nanny cam, but my uncle once set up a wildlife camera, the ones that hunters use, to get a photo if something happened in my great-grandmother's apartment. She was very demented, so she told us incoherent stories about how there were people there, stealing all her liquor and chocolates. Turns out she was the one who stole the goodies. But we also found out her other son, my other uncle, whom no one has contact with due to his shady actions with his wife, had a key to the apartment and was regularly visiting at midnight to steal some jewelry. Story number 12. I dog sit for some neighbors, one of which told me she has a camera in the living room for her dogs. You know those ones that dispense treats? Anyways, I thought it was a strange essential oil diffuser until she told me what it was. I was being paid to play with them for an hour, but she found out that I was actually staying for 2 or 3 hours. When she asked me about it, I think I said something like, "I want someone to do the same for my dog." Ever since then, she leaves me treats in the kitchen and even got me a Christmas present from the dogs. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.